Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today we're talking about workout quality. So, a lot of people get really caught up in the consistency, and of course, that's key. And so they'll get this routine and this regimen where they're training every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that. And they're really proud of the fact that they're consistent. And again, that's a great first start. However, we also need to really get dialed into these five components that I'm about to give you in this podcast that all make up workout quality. Because at the end of the day, if the workout's not deeply dialed in to your body's needs, there's not really that good a chance that you're going to keep seeing great results and also keep the safety profile high. So before we get into this list of five ways to improve your workout quality, I'm going to ask for you to like and subscribe and maybe grab the link so you can share this video on your social medias or with a friend so that more people can get this content. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, so exercise quality, workout quality. One of the first things I'd recommend is that you take a good hard look at progression. Now, progression comes in many forms. Sometimes it means leaving the resistances the exact same, leaving your durations the same. If you're going for, say, a 4 mile run, you leave it at a 4 mile run, but you start to change other factors within it. So, for example, let's say you're strength training and you normally take 90 seconds of recovery between exercises. Maybe it's time to shorten that to 75 or 80 seconds to increase your overall metabolism and overall intensity of the workout. Another way, of course, is to increase some intensities of any of your training, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's strength training. Anything you can increase safely in load is also going to be potentially helpful. At the same time, you don't want to start increasing load too much too quickly, because if you're doing that, that's going to be more harmful than beneficial. So there are a lot of different components here. We're not going to get into them all in this video, but the point is, if you're not being progressive at the right levels, then you're just leaving a lot on the table. It's almost like if you had a fifth grader who was still reading at fourth grade level, right? That's not appropriate. If they're going to put in the time to be reading and trying to do better, you want to make sure that they're progressing at the right levels. And you want the same thing for every component of your workouts. All their exercise durations, the intensities, the rest periods, and the total amount of time that's being spent on something. All right, so that said, let's move away from that first component of exercise quality, and now let's move into another one. So this next item is about if you're feeling the work more in your joints than in your muscles. This is going to be a big problem. And this relates to cardiovascular work and strength training also, in that you really shouldn't be feeling actual pain inside your joints. Now, I'm not saying you're always going to feel the work in the muscles that you're applying, because there are muscles that you're just not kinesthetically all that aware of. And especially if you are going for, let's say, a long jog, or are you doing the rowing exercise for 20 or 30 minutes, there could very well be a point there where you're just not really keyed in and feeling the muscle work all that much. But it is important that if you're feeling the joints, especially the knees or the hips, if you're really feeling pain in those joints, we either need to modify your movement or drastically just change the movement altogether and change your modality and move on to something else. There are a lot of strength exercises that are considered very safe for the masses that just won't really apply to you based on your limb length, for example. Maybe your forearms are a little bit longer than most people's, and that's causing trouble. Or maybe the length of your femurs, the upper leg, is particularly long or short. All those kind of things that are out of your control, that are unmodifiable, can actually lead to putting more stress on the joints than we'd normally want to put. So just because an exercise is generally considered safe, and maybe it's a machine at your gym and you're thinking, well, everyone else is using this and getting results, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always appropriate for you. You may have to make some modifications, or perhaps just not use that particular exercise at all, just because things aren't quite lining up for your body. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to do that. Now, for item number 3, we're going to talk about form and engagement. And I know this sounds kind of obvious to a lot of people. They say, well, of course, you have to have good form. But I want to talk with you a little bit about this, because form, it's really not as simple as looking at a machine at a gym or going online and seeing how an exercise is supposed to be done and then following that to a T. Because as I mentioned before, we're all really different. And frankly, what is good form to one person could be bad form to somebody else, especially if they have any sort of history of lingering injury, or if they perhaps had a certain surgery or something, and that now their body's a little bit different. And so there does come a point where, although we have a generally broad spread about what an exercise should look like, what a squat should look like, what a lunge should look like, there is a lot of very valid argument to exactly how much forward tilt should the upper body have, or exactly where should the heels be placed in relation to the knees. We can get into some very personalized things as personal trainers to help make exercises more productive and safer for people. As I mentioned before, different limb length and just different accessibility of your muscles and even where your muscles attach, that all can vary from person to person. And all of these factors will go into how exactly a certain exercise should be performed. One more note on this is I can't even tell you how many clients have come to me and said, I don't know why, but when I try such and such particular exercise, they say, I just feel so much pain. I don't know why. And sometimes it's correctable. Sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, on this one, we need to externally rotate the hips a little bit. I'm going to ask you to do this and this. And we make a few key changes and then we can still be very productive. Other times it's just that particular exercise is just not in the cards for them. And again, you want to be able to be okay with that. So that said about form, I also want to talk about engagement here. And that's, you have to know that an exercise is not as simple as how you're moving your body, but also which muscles you are working and are trying not to work. I've seen a lot of people with compensatory movement patterns where, yeah, they can make the exercise look fairly textbook, but ultimately they're trying to rely on and they're recruiting from muscle groups that you really don't want to be recruiting so much from. And this gets very nuanced and very particular, but the point is you do need to know exactly, you need to visualize which muscles you're trying to fire and which ones you're not so much trying to fire, which ones are supposed to be more supportive in their roles and not necessarily get your attention. I'll see a lot of times in a standing exercise, whether it's a standing bicep curl or lateral raise or anything, that sometimes the person's pelvis is starting to rotate and twist, and they're getting some movement in the pelvis, the low back, and even the legs that is really not desirable for the movement. And so things like that, although they're generally not considered to be very bad form, I would suggest, again, they're taking away from your workout quality and they're contributing to either a little bit more risk of injury or they're just pulling away from the efficacy of what you're doing. Now, let's talk about a really critical one when it comes to any fat burning component of your workouts. Okay, whether you're in a fat burning stage now or you will be later, or whether that's really the bulk of what you're doing, getting your heart rate in the right zone matters. There's been a lot of controversy about this one for decades and decades over where your heart rate needs to be to effectively lose body fat. There's a lot of factors that go into this. For beginners can generally be a lot more lenient and they can play more to their musculoskeletal health. What I mean by that is instead of telling a beginner we need to be at 70% of your maximum heart rate, we can play more into what's their joint health like. Are they able to move that aggressively in their body? A lot of times a beginner doesn't have the musculoskeletal capacity or the joint health or the mind body connection, the kinesthetic awareness to really move their body in a way that they can consistently get their heart rate up to 70%. And frankly, if you're a beginner, you don't really need that. Your body will shed body fat in most cases at much lower intensities. So that initial week or two or three, yeah, you don't necessarily need to worry so much about getting all the variables just right. Just create a good relationship with exercise. However, once you're not much of a beginner anymore, we need to keep stepping closer and closer to those clinical ideals. And that's really where you want to start looking at what your heart rate should be based on the amount of time you're going to be devoting to the exercises each week, and also how you're recovering, what your symptomology is like if you're having any symptoms whatsoever, and also your medical history plays a big role here as well. If you do have basically any medical history considerations, those will also play into the clinical guidelines as to what heart rate's going to be the safest and most effective for your fat loss. All right, this all brings us to our final point. By the way, if you have not yet, please click like and subscribe so you get more videos like this in the future. Now let's get on to our very final topic, and that's recovery. Recovery is literally as important as the workouts themselves. And this is not a joke. People tend to think that their workouts pretty much do everything, that your muscle is being gained during a workout or maybe immediately after, and that fat is being lost right there and then in the moment. But it's not really that simple. What's happening in between your workouts is so critical. From your sleep science to any supplementation to fix any nutritive deficits that you're having. And believe me, most people have them. Also, your stress management. You better believe that if you finish a great, really good quality workout, but then you have a really stressful evening, you're really going to hinder a lot of that progress, whether it's fat loss or muscle gains or anything else in between. You're really going to slow that down if you're going through heavy stress that ends up having physiological results on the body. I'd also suggest that hydration is a very big part of all of this. You definitely need to stay hydrated. And of course, nutrition, getting the right amount of protein and dietary fat are a big part of it all, as is your omega 3 to omega 6 ratio. These will have a lot to do with managing your hormones, and hormones really have a whole lot to do with not only the quality of your workouts, but what's going to happen as a result, whether we're going to get to lose the body fat and gain the muscle or not. So anyway, everyone, I hope this video has been helpful for you. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. And again, if you didn't already, please like and subscribe, and also share this video. Give this to people who might benefit from it. If you know someone who's exercising regularly and they're determined and disciplined, but they're just not seeing the results, this video might be what it takes to get them to look a little bit deeper and see what they can do to improve their own workouts. As always, you can contact us. I've got our contact information and some free downloads in the description. I'm looking forward to your health and your wellness success.